in storage that's not quite making it to the port when it should.
But some of the smaller players presumably don't have the same options that Fonterra would have.
Yeah, absolutely. They won't have the storage capacity that Fonterra will. Their storage does tend to be on site. They will just build product up until they're literally out of space, I expect.
What are the options here for those producing these goods? I mean, is there any chance that they can swap onto flights instead? Is there anything else they can do?
That certainly is an option, and some processors are taking that option, sending things by air freight instead of by shipping. It totally depends on which product it is. If it's a high value product, so UHT milk, cream, some of your high value lactose and whey type products, that's worth shipping by air because processors are getting paid quite a good amount for that product anyway. So adding the extra cost to ship it by air is not as much of a problem. It's probably more the commodity product that you don't really want to send by air because it's not valuable enough to be worth doing that. That's facing the issues with shipping.
No, if you've got those great big bulky products, but any chance of somehow putting out an urgent call to their sort of shipping partners and saying, look, we're desperate, you've got to send something more in this direction, or indeed doing something about these refrigerated containers which are also not arriving at the same time?
Unfortunately, I don't think it's the shipping companies that are necessarily in control of the situation. It's a whole lot of factors all coming in together, so there's no one trigger that can kind of fix it. We've got New Zealand being actually bypassed by some shipping companies. We've got an Australian port worker strike, so there's a whole bunch of containers sitting there. We've got containers sitting in Europe with Brexit happening, so they're building up stock there. And then we do also have a problem here that some containers are just sitting on the port here because they're not able to be picked up. So a whole variety of factors that it's a bit hard to kind of point the finger at one company and go, you need to fix this.
So how is Brexit affecting things? Is just that the general confusion or something more specific?
So it sounds like it's people building up stock in anticipation of Brexit happening. So on that date that Brexit occurs, tariffs get imposed. Unless there's a trade agreement in place, there's a whole lot of trade areas that then come down between the UK and the European Union. So people will want to have the stock there on their side of the port to make sure they've got the product that they normally would have, instead of trying to import it after Brexit's happened and facing a whole lot of barriers.
What does that mean for exporters who then are sending over goods that will have a much shorter shelf life because they've been sitting in a warehouse and when they get there, obviously they'll have to be sold pretty quickly?
Yeah, absolutely, it will be, and that's going to become a problem at the consumer level if that is what occurs. Likely there will need to be some sales or something. It's going to depend on processors' contracts as to how they're affected by that. If there's something in their contract to say if you don't get the goods to us within this time frame, then we pay a lot of cost or something like that, that might happen. But I couldn't tell you what the contracts are, so I'm not sure what exact effect that will have.
No, but presumably also when it comes to re-signing those contracts, there could also be an issue. They said, look, you failed us once, we're looking somewhere else. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's that relationship building thing, right? So if there's a failure at this time, it does become a problem for the next contract. You're absolutely right.
What about farmers at the farmer's end? Should they start to be being worried at this stage?
It's not likely to affect too much at the farm level. Milk price tends to be set on commodity prices. So whether the sale's gone through or not, it's probably a bit of a murky grey area in terms of how milk prices work. But in terms of Fonterra's dividend, it may affect that because they may not have the income coming in that they expected. The issue will probably be more in sort of 6 to 12 months' time. The revisions to DERA mean that Fonterra doesn't have to collect milk from next season. So they may choose to collect less milk next season, and that may affect some farmers at that point.
Amy, that's brilliant. Hopefully they all get the cheese and everything else on those ships and into the containers.
Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't keep building and becoming a giant issue, but
Yeah.
hopefully it stays contained.
Cool. Thank you so much, Amy.
That's all right, no problem.
Cheers. Bye now.
Bye.
Good morning. We have been here overnight assessing the impact of the significant rainfall that occurred on Monday afternoon and indeed over the last couple of days. I want to acknowledge the Mayor, Kirsten Wise, the Controller, and indeed all of the volunteers that have come to assist the community in its time of need. There have been a number of families from the Napier area that have been significantly impacted. This has resulted in some people being evacuated from their homes, a number of people been without power for 2 nights to date. There is still quite a significant amount of water that is on the grounds here, and that will be the subject of ongoing monitoring, both the way it subsides, but of course the task of many of the team behind me will be to continue to assess the needs of the community, both from a welfare perspective and indeed, of course, from the structural response, what needs to be done. There are a number of government agencies that have been involved in the response to date and that have kicked in from when the event first occurred on Monday. From those provisions to relocate people, the Ministry for Social Development has been providing funds to those that need it immediately. But we also, as a government, recognise that in these times there will be other needs that sit above and beyond. We have been in discussions with Her Worship, the Mayor, about a temporary fund that can be provided to the Mayor to support in those ongoing welfare needs. The government will be making a contribution of $100,000 to the Mayoral Relief Disaster Fund for the Council to exercise their discretion and to ensure the support of the welfare of those in this community. Again, I want to stress how important it is for all of us standing here that the welfare and well-being of those that have been impacted is at the forefront of our response. There has been an 0800 number set up to assist for any persons that has been affected. That number is 0800 422 923. And people, please, we know and we're hearing reports that some people do not know that there is support available to them. There is, and the team here is here to provide that support. Finally, just to those volunteers, to the civil defence responders, those from FENS, Red Cross, and the numerous agencies that have provided their time, their energy, their efforts, the volunteers on the ground that have dropped tools, left their families to provide support for those people in need. We want to say thank you, acknowledge the work that you've done to date, and this is an ongoing situation. But look, we're happy to take a couple of questions.
Mayor Wise, can I ask you, what do you intend to spend this money on?
So firstly, I'd like to say thank you very much to Central Government for providing this funds for the Mayoral Disaster Relief Fund. And obviously our first priority will be looking after those families that have been impacted and needing to leave their homes and ensuring that they've got all their basic needs being met in terms of food, nappy, clothing, and there will also be whānau that are remaining in their homes that will be requiring some additional assistance as well. Recognising that they are able to access some funding already through other key government agencies, but this fund will enable me to actually really work with the community and identify what their biggest needs are and ensure that we can meet those.
Are you willing to potentially put in more, Minister, for help if it comes to?
Yeah, look, currently you'll be aware we're in the state of monitoring and assessing what the extent and the nature of the damage is. This contribution is, of course, to acknowledge that there may be welfare needs that sit outside those immediate ones that we can see, but this will be an ongoing discussion with the Mayor to continue to assess and ensure that the right support is being provided as the situation becomes clearer to us.
Can you give a bit of an update of what, I don't know who the best answer this, but just an update of what happened since we were last here yesterday in terms of rainfall and damage that's occurred overnight?
So I'll pass over to Ian in a second. Yesterday we had a collaboration of emergency partners, Fire and Emergency, Urban Search and Rescue, Civil Defence and the Red Cross, and we undertook 334 assessments, and really the focus is on the welfare and really reaching out to the vulnerable members of our community. So the focus will that be going forward today is again to get out into those communities and to ensure that anyone who needs our help will receive it.
Yeah, so overnight we evacuated another 30 people into emergency accommodation, so we now have about 60 people in emergency accommodation. Overnight the rain, look, it hasn't helped us, but it hasn't made the situation any worse, and today obviously it's going to make life a little bit uncomfortable for first responders and for the people that are actually already impacted by this. But at the moment our pumping systems across Hawke's Bay are working well, but we'll continue to monitor the situation. We've got some thunderstorm warnings as well for later today, and we've got some additional pumpage coming into Hawke's Bay today as well.
Were you expecting more overnight?
Yeah, we were expecting more rain than what occurred, so I think we're up to about just over 20 millimetres so far, so that's a good news story, yeah.
What kind of emergency accommodation are people staying in?
So at the moment we're using Kennedy Park Resort, which has a number of motels and cabins and such like. That's now full, so we're actually now starting to move people to Hastings, to the Angus Inn in Hastings.
Just in terms of the drainage system over the last couple of days and power outages, are you happy with how that's all been handled? Some residents have said that if they had more warning they could have protected their homes, and also a lot of people have gone a couple of nights or at least a night without power. So are you happy with how that's all held up?
Sure. Yep. So look, in terms of the power, just an update this morning. Our power company Unison has been working overnight. They've managed to get that down to sort of around about 20 customers, and they'll be working on those today. So that was big progress. In terms of the power for the pumping systems, that's a priority, obviously. So there hasn't been any serious issues with our pumping systems.
In terms of property assessments today, what are the main areas of focus for you from a fire perspective?
So clearly, as we've said, our real priority is to get to our vulnerable members of our community. So we're really focusing on the areas of Mariwa, Piramai and Maranui. And we have teams that have set out this morning and really focusing on the welfare needs.
In terms of the access to those areas, has it dropped a lot, the water level, and made it a bit easier this morning?
Access is challenging, and we are very fortunate to have a really close relationship with the New Zealand Defence, and they are providing the vehicles that we can access those properties.
What sort of vehicles are needed to get into those areas?
Yeah, so the water level is up to my knee level. So the Defence Force has got Unimog vehicles, and that's how we're transporting our responders and evacuations if necessary.
In terms of the hill last night, how happy are you with the way it held up, and what geotechnical advice have you received so far?
So a partnership with the Napier City Council building officers and a supply of a geotech engineer. Our urban search and rescue teams are working on the hill currently. We have 18 properties that are deemed uninhabitable and 12 significantly damaged. We are really focusing on those this morning with the building officers to give confidence to the community.
Can I just clarify, are all those properties based on the hill, or are the uninhabitable ones also in areas like Mariwa?
So the ones that are significantly damaged are based on Napier Hill.
So that flats, and so those 30 properties are all on the hill.
That's correct.
Okay, do you expect that number to increase today as you go around to places like Mariwa?
So just to clarify, we've got 18 uninhabitable. Of that 18, 12 are significantly damaged. The Urban Search and Rescue crews will be here this week, and we will be doing a thorough assessment of hill properties.
Okay, so it's only 18 in total.
Correct,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
Minister, what's your plan for this today?
We still have a number of discussions to have with some families and residents on the ground. I'm looking forward to having a discussion with Ngāti Kahungunu and Te Taiwhenua o Here Taunga. They are also providing response, and so it'd be good to get a view on how they and their teams are going. But look here, as I've said, the Prime Minister and my colleagues are just really keen to make sure that we are across how people are feeling in the town, what the support is required. So will we continue to be briefed by our colleagues here and provide the support that we can.
We've heard reports this morning from educators who have had a lot of damage to their schools. Have you reached out to the Minister of Education in terms of what support's going to be provided to them?
Yeah, look, I've spoken with some of the educators here in the region as well. We're all at the preliminary phases of trying to assess the damage and assess what resources and needs will be required ongoing. All right, well, thank you very much all.
Sorry, Minister, there was a trucking there. Just quickly on the schools, can you just give us a quick rundown of how many schools are still closed and what's happening on that?
I'll leave that one to Ian.
Yeah, sure. The schools are communicating directly with the families. I'm aware of about 2 or 3 schools that are still closed, up on the hill and also down in the flat.
Any specific damage in particular? Is it just classroom flooding sort of thing, or is there debris that may have been affecting the schools as well?
My understanding it's inundation, particularly down in the Maraenui Mariwa area.
Cool.
Great, thanks all.
Cross, Rachel O'Connor, says it also provided them with blankets and warm clothes for the Kiwi winter they'd not been expecting to stay for.
I mean, we've had people come in